Welcome back to the Fallen Giants rebuild here on Super Sammy Plays. We're heading into season 9 of our rebuild off the back of one of the poorest seasons we've had for a number of years now. A ridiculous 14 draws last season left us some way off the top in 4th place and with plenty to improve on this season. But we've got our biggest transfer budget to date to try and help rectify the situation. We've just got to try and keep the wage budget below that pesky wage cap. So, can we make some big signings to help us get back to challenging for the league title? Well, let's get into it and find out. This summer is starting a little bit differently as we'll be participating in the Club World Cup. And if you're not familiar with it, let me tell you, the prize money alone is worth taking seriously. We'd have a new player to debut as well, as we'd signed defender Mihai Moldavenu for a club record 47 million, which might sound like a lot, but I actually bid his release clause last summer of 98 million before withdrawing the offer. At still only 20 years of age, he has got some great attributes and looks like he could have a very big future, judging by his valuation. Also, just for reference of our improvements as a club, we are up to 19th now in the European club rankings. But on to the Club World Cup, our first match was against another Deportivo as we faced Mexican side Guadalajara. An own goal gave us an early lead before goals from Onyeka and Maite wrapped up a 3-1 win in our first group game. Our second game went even better, with Tyne getting us off to the perfect start just 30 seconds in. Maite then got his first of 3 for the day before Toprak added another to take us 3-0 up inside the opening 20 minutes. Tyne got the fourth before Mamba joined in the scoring, and then Maite wrapped up his hat-trick before Gui added the final goal in an 8-0 obliteration of Wydad Casablanca. Like I said, the money alone is worth taking this cup seriously. That second win meant we already qualified for the second round, but we still put on a show for the fans, beating Valle 4-0 with goals from Onyeka, Tyne and a brace from Sesko. Galatasaray were our opponents in the second round, and Onyeka got us in front just 12 minutes in, after Mamba's pullback. Maite and Onyeka added goals for us before Galatasaray finally replied to make it 3-1 on the half-hour mark. But it was made more comfortable for us when Sesko added a goal either side of half-time to take us 5-1 in front. Maite then added a sixth before an own goal from Gadu gave Galatasaray another consolation as we progressed with a 6-2 victory. We also received 5.5 million for playing in that round before finding out our opponents for the next, Manchester City. Maite got us in front 5 minutes in before pouncing on Mark Gay's mistake, going all the way through and scoring his second 13 minutes later. As you can imagine though, this game wasn't going to be as smooth sailing as previous rounds, and with 20 minutes left, City got themselves back level. Mark Gui looked to have gotten the winner after he put us 3-2 up, but Destiny Udogie got City back level for a second time, sending us to extra time. But after a goalless extra time, we went to penalties, and both teams scored all 5 to take us to sudden death. Gadu bagged his penalty to put the pressure on, and that was enough to see us through to the next round, as Gazierowski hit the post. So we've received 9.7 million for that win before our semi-final match against Inter Milan. And this one took much longer to get going, with Tyne getting the first in the 75th minute. Apparently, you're most vulnerable when you've just scored, and that was evident when just 2 minutes later, Inter got back level through Lautaro Martinez. It was even more evident when we retook the lead less than 2 minutes later again, when Sesko fired past Gabara. And that was enough to take us to the final. So we took another big lump of money before facing PSG. And they didn't have too far to travel for this one, with the final being played at Marseille's Orange Velodrome. But 35 minutes in, it was just that good in front when Maite found Sesko, who fired past the on-rushing Chevalier. Our lead didn't last long though, as just 6 minutes later, Kvaratskhelia found Asano Drago, who continued his great record against us and getting his side back level. And that was the final goal of the game, as we ended up going all the way to penalties, in which Haaland fired home first. Ironically, Maite, who'd been in top form throughout the tournament, missed our third to hand PSG the advantage. João Neves kept that advantage before Chevalier made himself the hero, saving another penalty and handing his team the cup. Although it's never great to lose a cup final, at least we were heavily compensated for our participation in it. First, 22 million for playing in the final, and then another 14 for playing in the tournament itself. Some of our players had really impressed too, with Maite getting the top goal scorer award with 8 goals in 7 appearances, as well as Tyne being named best young player. Best young player, but not quite good enough for the dream team, hilariously. So, now that was out of the way, we turned our attention back to recruitment for the upcoming season. Like I said at the start, we've got our biggest budget so far, and with just over 90 million to spend, we're going to be changing our transfer approach this season. Of course, I'll still be keeping an eye out for some youngsters and free agents, but I think we just need one or two signings to really take us to that next level. But before we look at incomings, we're going to be saying goodbye to one of our first signings we made on this rebuild. Sharon Dorr felt he'd achieved everything he could with us and felt it was time to move on. So we accepted his request to leave the club and soon after Marseille's offer. A few days later, he left for France as we confirmed the deal for 16 million. We'd also be without another of our first signings with Cups tearing his knee ligaments, meaning he'd miss the start of the season. Also, with just 12 months left on Gui and Ekitike's contracts, I got to work on extending their deals. As much as I don't think Ekitike's been great for us, I was hoping to sell him at some point and get a decent transfer fee. Finally, to potential signings though, I made an offer for a now 31-year-old Morgan Rogers, who I thought would be perfect for our left wing cam role. While we waited for a response from that, Ekitike joined Cups in missing the start of the season, but thankfully not quite as serious. We also got the title odds for the season, which had us in 4th place again at 18 to 1. After having to withdraw from the Rogers deal due to his wage demands, I decided to go big and try and bring in a top class goalkeeper, making an offer for Dennis Seaman, who had a release clause of just 30 million, before offering him a contract. Talking of contracts, both Gui and Ekitike had agreed new deals, but unfortunately Seaman rejected our offer in favour of a new deal at Stuttgart. As you can see, our new approach was going very well. So on to another target, and we made an offer for versatile Manchester City man Nico O'Reilly, eventually agreeing a fee of potentially 65 million. Totally contradicting the Morgan Rogers deal, we agreed to a contract of a club high of 250 grand a week. Thankfully, there were no issues with this one, and O'Reilly joined the club, which went down very well, along with Osorio, who signed a new contract. Unfortunately, O'Reilly's debut didn't exactly go to plan, as we lost 3-1 to Cody Gakpo's Girona. At least our first home game went better, with Mark Gui scoring the only goal in a 1-0 win over Real Madrid. We finally offloaded McCamat to Newcastle for just 5 million before drawing 0-0 with Sevilla, as well as making an offer for a young 6'7" striker to try to develop for just over 500,000. Gui got the winner again in another 1-0 win, this time over Osasuna, before we accepted an offer for another of our long-serving players, Cesar Casadei. We confirmed the signing of Kleber before facing current league champions Atletico Madrid. 36 minutes in, Nico O'Reilly's free kick found Moldavano, who laid it off for Engels to cross, finding Mark Gui, who continued his great start to the season by putting us in front. Their manager must have given them a rocket at half time though, as just 50 seconds into the second half, Gudu got caught on the ball, resulting in Tresoldi equaliser in what was the final goal in a 1-1 draw. That was also the final day of the window, as we saw our last deal confirmed with Casadei leaving for Saudi. So the transfer window was closed and we'd made 2 big signings, but would that be enough to help us get back to challenging for the title and improving on all those draws from last season? Well, they certainly hadn't changed what Europe thought of us, with odds of 150 to 1 for the Champions League, suggesting we were one of the weakest teams in the competition. But when Nico O'Reilly got his first goal for the club against Dortmund, followed by goals from Mamba Mater and Gui in a 4-1 win, we certainly hit back at the odds makers. Mark Gui then gave us the lead on his return to former club Chelsea after a tidy team move, before Giovanni Quenda hit back with a low drive. But it was us who had the last laugh, as 15 minutes from time, O'Reilly's effort came back off the post to Maite, who passed into an open goal to give the middle finger to those 150 to 1 odds. So a perfect start in Europe, but how about the league? Well, we followed those Champions League games up with a home tie against Osasuna that saw us take the lead through big money summer signing O'Reilly. Gui added a second with a filthy little chip before Mumbo wrapped up the 3 points with the game finishing 3-0. However, we didn't continue that form into the next match, with this being the only goal in a 1-0 loss to Villarreal. Back to Europe though, when we had a tough test at the San Siro against Italian giants AC Milan that saw O'Reilly bag another. But that was cancelled out when a corner only got cleared as far as Pavlovic. He laid it off to Berti, who scored a brilliant long-range effort to earn his side a point in a 1-1 draw. Real Sociedad were up next, and it was the home side that took the lead 23 minutes in, when Silva found Goico Echea. We didn't see another goal until 74 minutes, when Manwa skipped past his defender, crossing to Sesko, who headed us back level. And we weren't done there either, as Thomason showed his cross ability with a very similar goal, this time headed in by Onyeka, who won us all 3 points in a 2-1 win. We also scraped past our opponents in the next game too, winning just 1-0 against Swiss side Salzburg thanks to wing-back Osorio. It was clear who our main man had been so far this season too, as Mark Gui scored another 2 goals in a much more impressive 4-1 win over Valencia. An away trip to Betis was up next, and it was the home side that landed the first blow, taking the lead through Aslani. But that lead lasted less than 90 seconds when Manwa's cross found O'Reilly, who headed us back level. 20 minutes into the second half, we managed to get ourselves in front with a pretty scrappy goal finished by Meite. But similarly to the first half, our lead didn't last long, after Engels got caught on the ball, eventually leading to Tony Fernandes equalising just 2.5 minutes later. Thankfully though, and not for the first time this season, Onyeka came to our rescue, scoring the final goal in a 3-2 win. Those results in Europe had us currently sat top of the league phase table, albeit most teams had played a game less. But in terms of our domestic lead, it was us that had the games in hand, but even if we win them, we'd still be 5 points off the top. It's fair to say, we need to put a serious run together if we're to close the gap at the top of the table. At least we'd maybe be able to make another signing in January, as the board had increased our transfer budget up to 19.5 million. A 1-1 draw in our next European outing probably meant we wouldn't be top of the table for much longer, but at least we improved in La Liga. O'Reilly gave us the lead after Sesko missed yet another penalty, before goals from Gui and Engels wrapped up a 3-1 win over Getafe. Our next couple of games were also an improvement. Firstly, a couple of goals and another missed penalty for Sesko in a 3-0 beating of Racing de Santander, followed by an easy 4-0 thrashing of Apoel in the Champions League. Unfortunately though, we ended this month as we started it, drawing 1-1, this time in the Liga against Malaga. The board obviously weren't happy with what they were seeing as they increased our transfer budget again, ahead of a 2-0 win over Mallorca that saw Sesko finally score another penalty prior to Meite adding a second. An important game against Celta Vigo followed, on which Sesko opened the scoring 9 minutes in, and it was that man again adding a second just a few minutes later. Gui then got himself a brace either side of an own goal to send Deportivo fans home happy with a 5-0 hammer in the first Galician derby of the season. An away trip to Almeria followed that saw Gui and Sesko both getting on the scoresheet in a 3-1 win, before a disaster away at Athletic Club. For Maloney, Lozano got 2 and assisted the other as they took all 3 points in another 3-1 scoreline. Not the ideal result before facing Barcelona. Even less ideal when Fermin gave the away side the lead just 6 minutes in. But finally, a bit of luck went our way when Pau Cabas' own goal got us back level on the hour mark. Unfortunately, the own goals didn't stop there though, as Esteban's cross deflected off Cups to restore Barcelona's lead. And just 4 minutes later, Yamal added a third that was enough for the 3 points as Barcelona took a 3-2 win after Meite's 97th minute consolation. We did at least end the year with a win, beating Huesca 3-0 in the Copa del Rey third round. So we head into the January transfer window with a pretty big budget. So we went ahead and made an offer for someone that we tried to sign in the summer. And with just 6 months left on his contract, he'd cost us a fraction of the price, with Villa accepting an offer of 18.5 million. Obviously, I could wait to try and get him on a free in the summer, but I wanted him now to give us another option going forward. Although, maybe his wages would have been less in 6 months' time. I did accept a loan offer for Chukwuemeka, which would help make room for Rodgers' arrival though, with a potential future fee of 20 million, which, let's be honest, probably won't happen. But before we confirmed those deals, we had a Super Copa match against Atleti at the Bernabeu to take care of. After a goalless first half, we finally made the breakthrough 6 minutes into the second half after a deflected strike from Engels rattled in off the crossbar. Thomason's corner found Engels for his second, 15 minutes from time, before thankfully what turned out to be a consolation from Kapangu as we advanced to the final with a 2-1 win. And we'll be playing Barcelona in that final, where we'd have the new star man to showcase as we finally completed the deal for Morgan Rodgers. We'd still have Ekitike available too. After I tried to move him on with potential offers of 33 million, we only actually received loan offers with crazy unrealistic future fees and poor wage contributions. So on to the final and Morgan Rogers' debut. Firmin looked to have continued his brilliant record of scoring against us, but thankfully it was offside and the score remained 0-0. Well, for 6 minutes at least, as Engels continued his good recent goal scoring form, getting Rodgers his first assist for the club with a tidy finish. Engels weren't done there either, as he scored an absolute screamer right on the stroke at half time. 17 minutes from time, it was Engels there again, as he scored the perfect hat trick, heading home Thomason's corner to give us a 3-0 lead. A few minutes later, Pedri framed Stevens, who looked to have given Barcelona a way back into the game, but for a second time, the goal was ruled out for offside, and it was us that took home the trophy, our second Super Copper of the rebuild with an incredible 3-0 victory. Those 5 goals across the 2 games from Engels were also a new record, as well as his 2 Man of the Match awards. No time to celebrate though, as we were straight into another Copa del Rey match, beating Burgos to advance to the quarter-finals with 2 goals from summer signing Kleber. Gui and Leone got the goals in a 2-0 defeat of Girona before facing PSG in the Champions League phase, where Onyeka gave us the lead. Just after the hour mark, Haaland got the visitors back level, but it weren't for long as we got back in front straight from kick-off with another goal for Onyeka. Mamba added a third for us before a 95th minute corner rounded out a perfect performance from Onyeka as he wrapped up his hat-trick. And we continued that goal-scoring form into the next match too, beating Sevilla 4-0 before a slap back to reality at the hands of Inter Milan with a 91st minute winner. That win over PSG was enough to see us through to the round of 16 though, as we finished in 5th place of the league phase table, the highest of the non-English clubs. That was also the end of the transfer window too, with just Rodgers joining and Chukwuemeka leaving on loan. In typical football manager fashion, we beat Osasuna 3-1, and new signing Rodgers picked up an injury, meaning he'd miss the next 6 to 7 weeks. Our Copa del Rey quarter-final against Sociedad was up next, and a chance for some of our youngsters to impress, and that they did. Kleber put us in front with his first of a brace, followed by Meite, and then this screamer from Ona Toprak to make it 3. Kleber then added his second after their keeper saved Morgan Fury's header on our way to the semi-finals with a 4-1 win. Arsenal came in with an offer for Leone, leaving us with a decision to make. Take the profit and play a youngster for the rest of the season, or reject the offer and keep an unhappy player. So I decided to negotiate the offer to get us a little bit more money before moving him on for just under 40 million, a big increase on the 10 million we paid for him just 18 months ago. With an away trip to Atleti up next, it was a big test to see whether we'd miss him or not. Well, we certainly didn't look like it when Guerrero's cross came back to Gui, who gave us the lead on the half-hour mark, and no player would have been able to stop Baena's equaliser. But just 4 minutes from time, Leona's replacement, Burdisso, whipped cross to the far post, was met by Onyeka, who headed home to win us yet another 3 points. We certainly didn't look to be any weaker in the next couple of games either. Firstly, beating Almeria 6-2 with a brace from Ekitike and a hat-trick from Meite, followed by a huge landslide win against Cadiz. 4 goals from Sesko in the first half, including another perfect hat-trick, was the standout performance before goals from Engels, Morgan Fury and Gui rounded out a 7-0 win. A boring Champions League draw for us had us facing Atleti again in the round of 16, who was sat just in front of us in La Liga. We were up in third with 24 played, but again, some way off the top of the table with Barcelona way out in front, only having dropped points twice so far this season. Sesko was on form again, getting a double against Oviedo in a 3-0 win before our Copa del Rey semi-final first leg against Real Madrid. Bellingham got the away side in front after a tidy move and a comical attempt at saving it from Karim just 3 minutes in. But just 5 minutes later, Mamba's cross was eventually turned in by Morgan Fury to level the game. Rodrigo's pass then sent Krupi through to restore Madrid's lead before Krupi turned provider for Bellingham's second as Los Blancos took a 3-1 lead into half-time. 10 minutes from the end though, substitutes Gui and Engels combined before finding Mamba in space who smashed home to give us a chance that we took less than 60 seconds later when Zabani's poor header was picked up by Mark Gui, who ran straight through and made the score 3-3 and levelled the tie for an exciting second leg. A much closer game against Cadiz this time, as we narrowly won 3-2 before Sesko was recognised for his recent brilliant form, winning Player of the Month for his 7 goals and 2 assists in February. And we'd be hoping he'd take that into the next game too, as we had our first leg of the round of 16 tie against Atleti. 20 minutes in, Mamba was brought down while looking to get onto Osario's cross, giving Sesko the chance to get us in front from the spot, which of course he missed. At least when Onyeka was brought down 10 minutes later, it meant we'd be playing against 10 men for the rest of the game. Not that it made a difference when we conceded just before half-time, when Siddiqui Sheriff headed into the back of the net. But just before Atleti took the lead into half-time, Onyeka beat the offside trap to get us back level. Unfortunately though, that was the only time we managed to break through, as we ended the first leg with a 1-1 draw. Before that second leg, we had another league match to take care of that didn't exactly start off great, as our corner ended with Real Sociedad taking a lead into half-time. Some stern words at half-time sorted us out though, as we eventually won 3-1 thanks to a 3-minute brace from Ekitike and topped off with a simple finish from Gui. So a good win with a few goals would put us in good stead going into the home leg against Atleti, right? Well, Siddiqui Sheriff had other ideas, as the second game in a row he headed his side in front. Their lead only lasted 3 minutes though, as the 4-man Sesko got us back level. Onyeka got us ahead from the penalty spot in the second half, and we never looked back from that point. O'Reilly added a third, and then another brilliant strike from Onyeka sealed a 6-2 aggregate win. And of course, our opponents for the quarter-finals would be the team we seem to play every year at this rate, Paris Saint-Germain. Unfortunately, we'd be without Osorio for those fixtures though, as he'd torn his groin in a goalless draw against Valencia, as well as Thomason, who'd fractured his arm in training. We'd at least have Rodgers available though, after his spell on the sidelines. Before that though, we had another important match with our second leg of the Copa del Rey semi-final against Real Madrid. And after an exciting 3-3 draw in the first game, we were expecting something similar, but that header from Kleber turned out to be the only goal as we won 1-0 and booked our ticket to the final, where we'd face Girona. We faced Real Betis at the Riazor in our next game, where summer signing Moldavenu got the final goal in a 3-0 win, followed by another injury, this time to Loni Toyin, who'd missed the rest of the season. The bad news didn't stop there either, as for the second time this season we were beaten by Villarreal. So with that loss, we found ourselves still sat in third place, still just a point in front of Atleti, but even further off Barcelona in first, who'd only dropped points once more since the last time we checked. We went into our next game with Joan Gadou, now a France international, and he celebrated with a clean sheet as we won 2-0 away at Getafe. I was hoping for more of the same as we welcomed PSG to the Riazor for our quarter-final clash, but just a single goal separated the sides, as João Neves' winner gave the away side the advantage going back to Paris. This certainly weren't ideal either, with both Gui and Meite currently on a barren run of goals. Also, probably not the best time to be asking for a new deal on the back of that defeat, even if I did go ahead and actually offer him one. 2 goals from Guerrero and another from Meite, who ended his goal drought, helped us on our way to a 3-1 defeat of Racing de Santander, before young Sanchez agreed to that new contract. He kept his place in the starting 11 for the return leg in Paris, but was unable to stop Kvaratskhelia, who quickly got his side ahead just 8 minutes in. 20 minutes into the second half, we finally saw another goal, but unfortunately it was for PSG extending their lead when Pacho headed home from a corner. Things continued to go downhill as Haaland added the third with a well-worked free kick, before finally a moment to cheer as Onyeka headed into the back of the net. But by that point the tide was over, and yet again PSG had knocked us out of the Champions League. I think it's fair to say that result put us on a bit of a downer, as a bought 0-0 draw with Malaga followed before a trip to the Bernabeu saw the home side take an early lead through Jude Bellingham. Mbappe converted from a spot kick before Guerrero made up for giving that penalty away as his header made it 2-1. Onyeka's cross was headed in by Sesko to get us back level. That lasted all of 2 minutes, as Dean Huijsen's header restored Madrid's lead with the final goal of the game. Not exactly the form you want to be taking into the Copa del Rey final. And our poor form continued, with Uche scoring the only goal of the game to take the trophy back to Girona in what was a really poor cup final at the Bernabeu. Gui's continued goal drought certainly didn't help in that game, or the next, as we dropped more points in the league with a 1-1 draw against Mallorca. That point was enough to secure Champions League football for the next season though, and with that we received our transfer budget of 120 million. Whether we'd be able to spend it, however, would be another matter. But back to the football, we had an important derby up next where we hoped to get back to winning ways. 18 minutes in, we got ourselves in front when Captain Cups headed Rodgers' free kick into the net, but our lead didn't last long, 3 minutes in fact, as El Abdellaoui levelled for Celta. But just 3 minutes later again, we got ourselves back in front when Guerrero's header looped over Moritz, prior to Rodgers adding a third as we wrapped up the 3 points and a double over our rivals this season. We backed that up with another win too, beating Athletic Club narrowly 3-2, sending us into the final game of the season in decent form. Now if Onyeka could have just waited one more game, that would be great. Not that our last game meant much, facing Barcelona, who'd already been crowned champions, and us already guaranteed top 4. And it was us opening the scoring 20 minutes in when Sesko tucked away Mambua's cross. Barcelona replied 12 minutes later when Estebao's cross was turned in by Minter. But it was us that took all 3 points when Morgan Rodgers found Guerrero, who placed his shot past Garcia to end the season with a win. And this is how the table looked after that final game. Like I said, going into it with Barcelona champions way out in front and us comfortably in third, just 3 points behind Madrid in second. Guerrero had also won the final player of the month for May, as well as Meite getting his first goal for France, sending everyone into the summer break on a high. Our top shirt seller for the season had a couple of new names on it, but even if his name weren't on it, I did go ahead and offer Onyeka a new deal to keep him at the club for another 4 years. That is presuming he does sign the deal. We were finally starting to get the recognition we deserved in Europe too, with the rankings now having us in 10th place. And this is how the squad stacked up this season, with Sesko and Gui way out in front as our top goal scorers. One that stood out to me was that man Onyeka, who had 14 goals and 14 assists in just 19 starts, albeit 33 sub-appearances. And another that stood out, but for the wrong reasons this time, was Ekitike. Just 8 goal contributions from him left me with some options to consider in the summer. So, we fell short again. We were just unable to compete with Barcelona this season. They were just completely on another level. It certainly felt like a step back in the right direction, but I am really struggling to think how we are supposed to compete with these wage restrictions. Having said that, with the signings we've made this season, I do feel like we are getting closer to that long-awaited league title. But with this season over, we have just 1 season left of the rebuild, so it is literally now or never for that La Liga title. To see if we do it though, you will have to tune in to the final episode and the final season. And if you've enjoyed this one, do me a favour, hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.